Hello and welcome to a Talmud Israeli production. Today we will review the highlights of this week's course of Daf Yomi study, Masechet Eruvin, pages 7 through 13. Daf Zayin, 7. The Gemara says, La'olam halacha kebeit Hillel. The law always follows the opinion of the Academy of Hillel. V'harotzeh la'asot k'divrei Beit Shammai yoseh. But if you would like to do in accordance with the viewpoint of Shammai, you're allowed to do so. This seems to be a blatant contradiction. How do we resolve this? The Gemara offers several possibilities. One is to distinguish between before the heavenly voice, the bat kol, announced that the law should follow Hillel, that beforehand you had some wiggle room and could have followed Shammai if you wanted to, whereas after the bat kol you had no choice, you had to follow the Academy of Hillel. However, the Gemara offers a different answer and says, La'olam la'achar bat kol. I could say, really, it's after the heavenly voice, v'Rabbi Yehoshuahi, and it follows the viewpoint of Rabbi Yehoshua, the lo mashkach bevat kol, who says we disregard the heavenly voice, as famously is known to us from the case of the Tanur of Achnai, that in the viewpoint of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Chananya, halacha is jurisprudence conducted by human beings, by the sages down here on earth, and lo b'shamayim, the Torah is not in heaven. So therefore, even after the episode of the bat kol, the person still has an opportunity to follow the viewpoint of Shammai. Page 8. Mahu lishtamesh tachat hakora. Are you allowed to use and carry in the area underneath the korah, the crossbeam? Rabbi Chia, and Rabbi Yochanan all said, mutar, you're allowed to. Shmuel, Rabbi Shimon bar Rebbe, and Reish Lakish all said, asur, you're forbidden to. What is the nature of the dispute? So, one school of thought said, Korah mishum heker, that the purpose of the crossbeam is to serve as a reminder that you are allowed to carry in the mavui area, which is enclosed and adjusted, but not beyond it. Whereas Mar Savar, the other school of thought, Korah mishum mechitza, that the crossbeam serves as a partition, an imaginary partition that extends downward to the floor. According to the perspective that the korah is for a heker, for a reminder, it would be permissible to carry directly underneath it because you could still see it and it's still a reminder. However, according to the view that it is a mechitza, the mechitza extends from the inner portion of the korah, and therefore the area directly underneath the width of the korah is outside the adjusted area, and you're no longer allowed to carry in that spot. Daf Tet, page 9. Makom she'ein bo dalad al dalad, an area in the public domain which is slightly elevated and does not have a dimension of 4 by 4 width by length, tzfachim, mutar livnei reshut harabim livnei reshut hayachid lekatef alav. Then individual who might be in the private area can adjust his package on that spot, just as an individual who was in the public area could adjust his package on that spot, meaning it's a makom petur, it's an exempt space, and there's no guilt for carrying from either an area of yachid or rabim into that makom petur. However, the sages issued an enactment, ubilvad shelo yachlifu. You're not allowed to go from the public area to the makom petur, drop the package, then pick it up again and go to the reshut yachid or vice versa. That even though under Torah law that might technically be allowed, it's essentially gaming the system. And we're afraid if we allowed you to do that, you might come to carry directly from Yachid to Rabim or vice versa. Daf Yud, page 10. Hilchata, nirim b'chutz, v'shavavim b'fnim, lidor mishim lechi. In a scenario where the lechi, which is adjusting a mavui, so that one could carry inside, that the lechi is visible from the outsider's perspective, from outside the mavui, but is indistinguishable from the wall, from the perspective of a person inside the mavui, nonetheless, that lechi is kosher, and the area inside the mavui has been formally adjusted, properly adjusted. Now, how could this happen? Very simply. If, from the perspective of the person inside the mavui, the wall, the fourth wall of the mavui, extended a little bit further towards the gap, whereas from the perspective of a person outside the mavui, in fact, that's not the wall of the mavui, that's a beam that has an indentation, but the indentation is only seen from the outsider's perspective. So there was some question as to whether this should be a kosher lechi, and the conclusion is it is a kosher lechi. Yud Aleph. Tzurat HaPetach Shamru, the frame of a doorway, the Tzurat HaPetach. How does one create it? Kana mikan, v'kana al gabehem. You have a beam or a reed, a vertical one on this side of the frame, a vertical beam or a reed on this side of the frame, and a vertical and a horizontal beam or a horizontal reed above the two, as a mashkof, as a lintel. So essentially 2 doorposts and a lintel. Notice they are referred to as a kaneh, not as a lechi. In common parlance, in modern day Eruv construction, the side posts of Tzuras HaPesach, the frame of a doorway, are typically known colloquially as lechi, but they're really not. They're really kana mekan. Now the question is, tzrichim liga and tzrichim liga. Is it necessary for the 2 vertical posts to physically touch the horizontal one on top? Rav Nachman said, ein tzrichin, they don't have to. And Rav Shesha said, tzrichim liga, they must touch. The halacha follows Rav Nachman, and in modern day Eruv construction, although we prefer for the vertical posts to touch the horizontal one, if they don't, if they fall just short, it's nonetheless kosher. Yud Bet, page 12. Ezehu mavoi shnitar b'lechi v'kora. What is the shape of a mavoi, of an alleyway, that can be properly adjusted with a mere lechi side post or kora crossbeam? The answer is, kol she'ar ko yater rachbo, if the length of the alleyway of the mavoi is greater than the width. And batim b'chatzor ptuchim u'tocho. There are at least 2 courtyards, chatzerot, that open from the mavoi, and that each chatzer has at least 2 batim, 2 houses. What is an example of an area that cannot be properly adjusted with just a lechi or a kora, but rather requires pas arba, a board of at least 4 tfachim? The answer is kol shemrubat. If this enclosed area is square and does not have a greater length than it does width. Page 13, Daf Yud Gimel. This is a story being told by Rabbi Meir about an encounter he had with Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael asked him, Bini ma malachtecha, what is your occupation? What do you do for a living? Amarti lo labalani. He said, I'm a scribe, I'm a sofer. Amarli, Bini havizar b'malachtecha. You got to be very careful, young man, with your work. Shemalachtecha malacha shemayim, because your work is the work of heaven. Shema atama chaser oto im me'ater ot. Because if you were to add 1 letter to a Torah scroll, or subtract 1 letter from a Torah scroll, nimtzeta machariv et kol haolam kulo, it's like you would destroy the whole world. That the fate of the world is resting upon the accuracy of Torah scrolls being written by the various sofrim, the various scribes of Israel. And so they must be extraordinarily careful to get it 100% right and to make no error. Everyone have a great week.